everybody, I am Miss Lindsay and this is my science school. Have you ever heard somebody say, "Oh, it's humid outside today"? Do you know what that word means? Do you know what the word humid means or the word humidity means? Remember a few weeks ago we had a lesson where we talked about the water cycle. What's the first step of the water cycle? Do you remember? It's evaporation. And when we get evaporation, that's where water becomes water vapor in the air. And when you have a lot of water vapor in the air, that's when it starts to feel humid. When somebody says, "Wow, it's humid out here." Now, when you don't have very much water vapor in the air, people say it feels dry. The air feels really dry. We have a lot of dry air here in Utah because we live in a desert. So we don't have a whole lot of water vapor in the air. But every once in a while, especially in July and August, we'll get a lot of water vapor in the air where we have a lot of those water vapor molecules in the air. And that's when the air starts to feel a little bit sticky, and that's when we say that it's very humid outside. Okay, let's get rid of all this humidity for just a second. Let's talk about evaporating water into the air. That means turning water, liquid water, into water vapor in the air. I've got two columns of air here. They're both at 40 degrees. Now, when they're at 40 degrees, they can only hold so much water vapor in the air. But if I were to take this column of air and warm it up to 80 degrees, the air molecules are going to start moving faster and faster and faster. And guess what? It's going to expand. So when it reaches 80 degrees, those air molecules have expanded so much that we can actually put more water vapor into the air. We've got more space. We've expanded that column of air. And so now we can evaporate more water. And so this air mass is going to feel stickier than the 40-degree air mass. So warmer temperatures can hold more moisture in the air than colder temperatures can. That's why in the winter time, sometimes your hands get really dry and you have to put lotion on them. It's because we don't have very many water vapor molecules in the air. Whereas in the summertime, when it's warmer, 80, 90 degrees, there can be, or the air can hold a lot more water vapor. And so your hands generally aren't as dry in the summer as they are in the winter. Have you ever wondered if you could tell how much water vapor is in the air at home by yourself without having some fancy instrument? Well, today I'm going to show you how you can do that with one single strand of hair. So for that, let's go over to the weather desk. Miss Jade is here. I asked Miss Jade to come help us once again because Jade has long, lovely hair. So we wanted to use her hair to be able to build our own instrument to help us tell whether it's dry or humid outside. Now, the reason we use a strand of hair is because did you know that your hair shrinks when the air is dry and it actually expands and gets longer when you have a lot of humidity in the air? So that's what we're going to build today.
I'm ready.
Okay, so what we need for this, I've broken down a box and I've just cut it into it sort of looks like this, and then I folded it over. I just took one of the folds of the box so that it will stand on its own, and Miss Jade's got one as well. You can sort of push it like this and get it to stand up. Now, if you don't have a box or you just have a piece of cardboard, that's fine. You'll just have to set it up against something, but I thought this would be better for us, that we could just have it stand up on its own. Okay. We also, in addition to our box that we've cut down, we need a white piece of paper. Thank you, Miss Jade. You're a wonderful model. Also, a piece of construction paper.
Any color?
Any color you want. I picked green because green we sometimes, in weather, use as humidity or moisture in the air. So I picked green for that reason, but you can pick whatever color you want. We also need a marker. Right there.
Here?
Yep, a marker, scissors.
Is this for my hair?
Well, we can cut out a piece of hair, or you can just pull one out of your head. I'll let you choose.
Perfect.
And then, oh look, you've got it stuck into the scissors.
It's because it's a magnet at the end of the scissors.
Oh, that's why they stuck together.
And that's why it's stuck together.
Okay.
Science.
Science, there you go. And we need a thumbtack as well. And then we need a couple of pieces of tape. So Miss Jade's got some tape there as well. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take our construction paper, that green construction paper, and I want you to draw an arrow. Make it kind of boxy. Let me show you sort of what I'm thinking. I'll draw it on the back of this. I want it to look sort of like this so that we can cut it out.
Okay.
Here, let me see. I don't know if you can see this. You'll be able to see it a lot better when Jade draws it with the marker. So we want an arrow. That is perfect, Miss Jade. She'll show it to you in just a minute. Yep, you just want a big block arrow like that. Okay? So that's the first thing we're going to do. And now you're going to cut it out.
All right.
Okay. This is what we're going to use to help us determine if the hair is shrinking or if it's growing based off how much water vapor we have in the air. So she's going to cut that out. We'll see how good her cutting skills are. How much she learned
I should have gone slower.
Kindergarten. When we learned how to cut in
now
kindergarten,
I'm nervous.
That was fun, huh? Okay, great. So she's cut out her arrow now. That is perfect. Okay, now we're going to take our white piece of paper and we're going to tape it to the front of this.
Okay.
Now the reason I used white is because Jade has pretty dark brown hair, so it'll show up better on the white piece of paper. If you don't have a white piece of paper, you don't really have to have a white piece of paper to do this. I just wanted to use the white piece of paper so that you would be able to see Jade's hair better once we get it on here. Perfect. Okay, now, I know we've got our air conditioning blowing in here, so it might blow it over from time to time. Now what we're going to do is we need to get a piece of your hair. How would you like to do this? Do you want to just yank a piece of hair out of your head?
If you could find one of the gray ones that's coming in since we don't go to the salons anymore,
it's true.
That would be great.
Okay, so you've got a good piece of hair there. Okay,
yes.
Now what we want to do is we want to tape one end of the hair to the top of the white piece of paper.
Okay. Whoops.
Perfect.
Oops.
Kind of hard to work with a piece of hair, especially when it's blowing like crazy from our fans back here.
Okay, I think I got it. And just tape it to the top?
Yep, just tape it to the top, just like that. Yep, that's perfect.
Okay.
Okay, so hopefully you can see Jade's dark brown pretty piece of hair there.
You see it right here?
Mm-hmm. So now we want to tape the other end of it to our arrow.
To the point?
No, what you want to do is, let me take it from you for a second. You'll just tape it. You'll take it on the back, and you're going to tape it to the back of the arrow, and then it'll look like this once we stick it on there. Does that make sense? So just tape it to the back of the green arrow, or whatever color you picked for your construction paper.
Should I fold it like this to tape the arrow on? Or just tape it?
I would just tape it.
Okay.
Yeah, just tape it like normal.
Okay. Like this?
Yep, but do it to the back of the arrow. Does that make sense? Here, pass it over to me and I'll do it. Okay, here we go.
No, it doesn't make sense, Miss Lindsay.
Sometimes Miss Lindsay's not the best at explaining things. So what I want to do is I want to take the bottom of her hair down here, and I want to take the back of my arrow. And except I want to do it so it's pointing this way. We want it to point. Now it's stuck to the piece of hair. And now our air conditioner is blowing it all over the place. Okay, so I want to take the back of the arrow. Here, I'll do it like this, and then we probably should have done this part before we got it taped onto, this is what I'm going to do, and then I'm going to flip it around. Okay, here we go. So I'm taping it to the back of the arrow, just like that, and now I'm going to flip the arrow around. Like that.
Perfect.
Okay, does that make sense to everybody? Now, to keep this arrow in place, we're going to use the thumbtack.
Okay.
Okay, so here we go. Now you'll want to pull the hair taut. not totally tight, but just taut.
Okay.
Yep, and now you're gonna wanna stick that thumbtack into the middle of the arrow.
Right here?
Yep, right there. That is fantastic.
All right.
Okay, now at this point, we're gonna take our marker again, and we're gonna draw some lines, do them sort of diagonal lines. We'll do one straight across like that, and then some diagonal lines down and some diagonal lines up.
Should I
sort of like
start here or on this side?
Do it right here. So
Oh.
the arrow's gonna be pointing to these lines
Oh,
like
okay.
that. Good. Perfect. And then do some going up as well. Good. Okay. So remember how I said when the air is dry, the hair is going to shrink. And when there's a lot of moisture in the air, when it's very humid, the hair is actually going to get longer. So as the hair gets shorter, this should go up, and when it gets longer, this should go down. So this is something that you'll have to watch over time, and this arrow is not going to move a whole lot. It'll just move a tiny bit. So why don't you write dry up here and humid down at the bottom? You know, this was actually made for the first time way back in 1783. Can you believe that? That was almost 250 years ago. There was a scientist who lived in Switzerland, and he was the first one to determine that hair shrunk when it was dry outside and that it got longer when it was humid outside.
That's fascinating.
And so he was the first one to make one of these. So as you watch this in the coming days, you'll see that arrow move ever so slightly to let you know that it's drier air or more humid air. Isn't that cool?
That is really cool.
Yeah.
Who knew?
Yeah, kind of
I
fun.
didn't. I do now.
So this is called a hair hygrometer. It's been something that's been around for almost 250 years, helping people to know how humid or how dry it is. Now, of course, as we've gotten more sophisticated, now we have really awesome computers that can help us tell the humidity of the air. But back then, they didn't have those things. And so they used things that they had, like hair, to determine if it was humid outside or if it was dry outside. All right, if you've got any questions for me, throw them into the comments of our Facebook feed, our live Facebook feed, and I'll be able to answer them for you. Let's have Jade pull those up and see if we have any questions. And well, we have just a few minutes to answer a few questions. You can ask me questions about humidity. You can ask me questions about a lesson that we've already had. We had a lesson about earthquakes last week. We also had a lesson about wind and how wind is made. So if you've got questions about those that I didn't answer for you, feel free to throw those in, or just a question about anything random. We'll see how much Lindsay has in her brain, or how much lab assistant Kevin can help us with his Google on his phone.
Yes, exactly. Some people just asking just kind of general questions about the supplies that are needed. Are thumbtacks needed? Can you use any color of paper? Those types of things.
Yeah, you can use any color of paper that you want. You need some sort of thumbtack or push pin, something that you can stick right in the middle of the arrow that will help it to move as that hair grows and shrinks, because remember, that hair is taped to the back of the arrow. So if it shrinks, it's going to pull that arrow up just a little bit, and if it gets longer, it'll push that arrow down just a little bit. So you just need something to stick in here that will allow this arrow to move up and down. So a thumbtack, a push pin, something like that.
And Blythe, 7 years old from West Valley City, said, would the arrow ever move all the way to the top of the paper?
I don't think so. No, I mean, your hair would really have to shrink for that to happen. So I don't think so. It's just going to move just a tiny, tiny bit. You're barely going to know it's moving. So you might want to even take a pencil and mark where it is one day, and then come back the next morning and say, oh, look, it moved just a tiny, tiny bit, because I can see where my mark was that I made yesterday. So you can say, oh, it must be getting drier. We have drier air moving in. That hair is shrinking and pulling that arrow up.
Does the color of hair make a difference?
No, it doesn't make a difference at all. This will work with any kind of hair. You do want to have a very long piece of hair. That's why I asked Miss Jade to help us, because she's got that long, pretty hair. But yeah, any kind of hair will work. Just make sure that it's long. Get the longest person in your family, the longest hair in your family, and use their hair.
What about curly hair?
Ooh, curly hair is a little bit trickier, and it may actually move a little bit more than straight hair would, because with the curls, they'll shrink up a lot, and so you might see a little more movement if you're using curly hair.
And then another question is, on average, how long does it take for the arrow to move?
You'll probably see it move within a day or two. It really depends on what's going on with the atmosphere at the time. Now, if you have a storm roll through, you're first of all going to see it go down because the moisture generally increases. The humidity goes up ahead of a storm, and then it generally drops behind a storm. So if there's some big changes happening in the weather, like we're going to see for the next few days, because we have a storm coming in tomorrow through Thursday. So if you make it today and then watch it for the next few days, you'll be able to first probably see that arrow dip down just a little bit because the hair is lengthening as the moisture increases. And then behind that storm, by Friday, you should start to see the arrow beginning to go back up as the hair shrinks just a little bit, and we get some drier air moving in. So it really has to do with what's going on in the atmosphere. If it's kind of boring weather, you're probably not going to see it move a whole lot. But if you've got some pretty drastic changes happening in the weather because you have a storm moving in or a storm moving out, that's when you'll see it change a lot more.
Why is it more humid in Tennessee?
Ooh, that's a good question. The reason that it is more humid in Tennessee than it is here is that Tennessee is closer to ocean currents that are warmer. So they're near the Gulf of Mexico, they're near the Atlantic coast. Those are very warm ocean currents, and we'll need to do a whole lesson on ocean currents. If you've ever been to Florida, lucky you, first of all, but if you've ever been to the beach in Florida, you've probably noticed that the water there is much warmer than it is, say, if you go to the beach in California. That's because in California, there's a cold ocean current. And over in the eastern part of the U.S., there's a much warmer ocean current. Now, those ocean currents really determine how much humidity is in the atmosphere, because if it's warmer water, it's easier to evaporate it, and it's easier to get more moisture into the atmosphere. So that's why places like Tennessee and Louisiana and Florida tend to be more humid than we are here across the West Coast, because our water source that's closest to us is a cold ocean current, and so we don't tend to get as much evaporation from there as they do back east. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, and there's actually a question I can even answer from
okay.
science school.
Ooh.
Someone asked, will it work with color-treated hair?
Oh.
Yes, it does.
Perfect. Yeah, it doesn't matter if it's color treated or not, because as we know, most of us have color treated hair.
Yes, we do.
We're showing that off now that we are not. Craig is asking me a question. Craig's our director in the back. What did you say, Craig? No, they don't need to be flipped. He's asking if they need to be flipped. No, what's going to happen is this hair is going to shrink up, and that's going to pull this part of the arrow up. So if it is dry, this hair piece is going to shrink just a little bit, pulling that arrow up. If the piece of hair lengthens, then it will drop down. So he was asking if we had messed it up. Nope, we did not mess it up, Craig. We mess stuff up sometimes, but not this time.
It's not a we, it's usually I mess things up. Not Miss Lindsay.
We mess things up sometimes. That's part of science. We talked about that, right? When you mess up, you can always start over. And we learn so much when we mess things up too. Making mistakes is not a bad thing, especially in science, because you always learn from your mistakes, and that helps you the next time too.
Where is it the most humid?
The most humid, anywhere where you have a very warm ocean current. So we talked about the East Coast. You talk about places down near the equator. The reason it's so humid down by the equator is because their ocean water is warm year-round. They basically have summer weather year-round at the equator. So those are the places where we have rainforest. If you've ever seen pictures of the rainforest, it's because it's so humid down there, and they get so much rain down there. And that's all because the water is just so warm down there. So it's easy to evaporate and get that water cycle going.
5-year-old Aston from Farnsworth Elementary wants to know if the wind affects humidity.
It can. It absolutely can. That is a great question. Now, the direction that the wind is blowing from tells you whether or not you're going to bring moisture into the atmosphere or not. So if we have winds coming straight out of Canada like we have right now, is there a lot of water in Canada, Jade? There's not a whole lot of water. No,
there.
and the water that they do have is not very warm. So we're not evaporating a lot of water in Canada. So if our winds are coming from Canada or a place like that that's not seeing a whole lot of evaporation, you're going to pull drier air into your state. But if your winds are coming, let's say our winds are coming from the south, they're coming from near the coast of Mexico. Now Mexico is much warmer, the water down there is much warmer, we see a lot more evaporation, and so that pushes that water vapor up into Utah if our winds are coming from the south. So that is a fantastic question. Yes, our winds do affect whether we have dry air or humid air. Lab assistant Kevin has something, I think.
And the most humidity
Yes.
for average, New Orleans, Louisiana.
Oh, New
at
Orleans, Louisiana.
75.9% humidity.
75.9% humidity.
On
I lived
average.
in Louisiana, and it is very humid there. I can tell you that. My
Your hair must have
goodness.
been really long.
It was very long and very frizzy too. Some people's hair kind of gets frizzy when it gets very moist outside, and my hair was like that. So when I lived in Louisiana, my hair was always frizzing up.
First grader Joshua wants to know, what is the most humid month that we see here in Utah?
July and August are our most humid months here. And do you want to know why? Because in July and August, our winds are generally from the south. We just talked about that, how winds can affect how humid or how dry it is. Well, in July and August, the weather pattern usually sets up in a way that we get a southerly wind and we pull in a lot of moisture from off the coast of Mexico. And so that's what we call our monsoon season. You know those thunderstorms that we get in the afternoon in the summertime? We get those because we're pushing up all this tropical moisture from just off the coast of Mexico. And then of course, what happens when you have too much water vapor in the air? It starts to condense, it cools down and it condenses into a cloud, and then you can get those showers and thunderstorms. So July and August are our most humid months here across the state of Utah.
Another question that we have is, this is from Rex from Spanish Fork.
Okay.
He says, will we see a bigger change in the arrow if we put this outside?
You might actually. I think that's a great question. I think you would. Now you'll have to be careful because you don't want it to get wet as storms roll through. So you might have to be careful about bringing it inside. But yeah, the heaters that we have and the air conditioners that we have do really impact the relative humidity inside your house. So you may see a bigger difference if you take it outside where we don't have those controls in place.
And then Skylar, 9-year-old from Utah, wants to know that when a storm's in Nevada, if it's windy here in Utah, will that wind push that storm to us?
Generally it will, not always, but generally it will. If you've got stronger winds, it means that that storm is beginning to roll in. Now it doesn't always mean that, but generally if we've got a storm in Nevada and the winds are very strong here, it means that that storm system is coming our way. Not always though.
We're going to switch gears for a minute. We have a couple questions about tornadoes.
Oh, okay. Guess what we're learning about on Thursday, by the way? Tornadoes!
There's the answer to one of them. Someone wanted to know, when are we going to learn about tornadoes?
Thursday. Thursday is the day that we are going to be learning about tornadoes. We're going to have a lot of fun learning about that and making our own tornado.
And that's another question. How does a tornado start?
Oh, okay. Well, you got to tune in for Thursday to see that because we're actually running out of time here. So yes, tune in Thursday. Let me show you what materials you need if you want to do the assignment with us on Thursday to make your own tornado. You need 2 2-liter bottles. So tell your mom and dad, we need to go buy some soda at the store and drink it all in the next 2 days because you need 2 2-liter bottles. They need to be empty. You also need some water. You don't have to, but you can have some lamp oil. That'll just help you see the tornado better. We're gonna use some lamp oil here on the science desk so that you can see it better at home, but you don't really need to have that at home. Also, you need what's called a Vortex Connector. You can get those at school supply stores or on Amazon, have it shipped to your house. You may be able to get it by Thursday. If you can't get a Vortex Connector, there's another thing you can do. You can get a washer, a little metal washer. That's a little round metal piece that has a hole in the middle. It sort of looks like a metal donut. So you can get one of those and some duct tape. And we are going to make our own tornado on Lindsay Science School on Thursday, 9:30 a.m. on KUTV's Facebook page, also on KUTV.com. We will see you then. Don't be tardy.
Toodles.
Wow.